Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hammer and Vajra. Today's episode is going to be a little out of the norm, as we're going to be much more on topic and direct with what I don't usually address, and that is the political concepts. Today, we're going to be discussing the current political environment and paganism. I have a guest speaker, my good friend Malcolm Stark. Malcolm.
Hello. Thanks for having me again. Good to be back.
Yeah, every time we get together, we have a lot to talk about. I mean, we're always talking online and sharing stuff, but sometimes our conversations go off rails and it could go on forever. I have a little bit of a
Yeah.
itinerary for today, as it were, but it's still going to be free flow. We do have a lot of topics to talk about, some very recent topographical topics, but so I think I would go directly into it. So just sort of cat out of the bag. Last year, you went to a rather big meeting of the minds for paganism, or what some people would say right wing, but it wasn't right wing. It was just general paganism, heathenry, folk faith, ethnic faith, and even Indo-European faith, which was the event done by the Exiles. How was your experience, before we get into any controversy, how was your experience at that, and what did you think about what you saw there and the presentation and how people's overall demeanor was?
Well, the first time around, where I met Tom Rousel in 2024, my first kind of impression was it drew a much larger crowd than I ever would have imagined for my area. And it was amazing, honestly. I met a lot of great people, like including Tom. There were a lot of great conversations. And then I just kept in touch with some of the organizers, as well as some of the people that I met there. And then this last year, it was a lot bigger and it drew a lot more attention. And as you know, I had like a display of my artifacts, and that really seems to have been a hit. Like every time there was an intermission, there were people around my table, and I also sold a lot of your books. And like overall, it was definitely the highlight of both of those years for me.
I definitely got a few more followers and people who bought my books online. Just people who, after you attended and people saw my books, even people who didn't buy them from you, I had sales go up for like the Kindle sales, or just in general sales go up. And of course, I sell my books for as much as I'm allowed to, before Amazon basically says you're not going to make any profit, and we can't afford to cut the book, but not so much as some of these people, to where the whole goal is profit, because honestly my goal is to get the word out there. But it's what I saw from, so I listened to Marcus's the Golden One. I listened to his like online thing that he did. I listened to Paul Wagner's online thing that he did, because they couldn't attend due to political reasons, which we'll get into. And honestly, those were great. The things they said were not even remotely controversial for anyone, except for anyone with a mindset 100 years ago or plus would have found nothing they said more than just the general understanding for any upstanding man out there. But it was good. Yep.
Yeah, and also anyone who just flat out is against the well-being of European peoples.
Yeah, that's true too. Those people will find that, or anyone who's, which is against the well-being of European peoples, anyone who's absorbed this constant cultural Marxist agenda that we see going on all the time, they of course are going to find offense in anything that those guys said. But in general, it was just like meaning, and something that I think all young men should listen to. And what I heard was great. And then of course what you said about the event in general sounded awesome. With that, I would say, kind of get into like how the importance of a meetings like that and local grassroots things are necessary, right? So I'm online a lot. I do have an an in real life kindred. I have guys I know just like yourself and other people I know who aren't just online. I see you online. I discuss with things in real life. We send each other mail, etc. And I know people in groups that I support directly. But I think that having these local grassroots movements where people can form their own kindred, their own tribe, is extremely necessary. And I think groups, meetings like which you went to are sort of the ground, sort of the foundation of starting such things, right?
Yeah. And I've kept in touch with a few of the organizers, and we've done several bloats together, and like kind of scattered through BC and Alberta. Like we've got quite a few guys actually, and on Samhain actually we got like a bunch of people from just throughout Canada together, and like had a just a big gathering and bonfire, and then eventually bloat. And like in just the past like 2 years since this conference started, like if I had to guess, I'd say that like there's probably about maybe 20-30 guys that like we've gotten together for these events, as well as the Samhain thing.
And so one of the big things is those guys getting together is the networking. For me, is like each one. Not everyone is going to have their own business. Not everyone's going to have their own craftsmanship, art style. But the people who are artists or craftsmen or have their own business, when they get involved with such things, I think I'm all for. I know people say, "Oh, vote with your wallet," and they think it's a capitalist conversation. But my thing is, vote with your wallet really does work, right? Because ultimately, those who are in power need to stay in power with money, and if you don't give your money to things, complacency, you can see in the current modern audience style video game things, it's all came to crumble, and those companies are like, hey, we actually want money now, and and some of them are turning around to get money, even if they're pandering, they're getting money. I think the same thing should do with supporting local artists, local musicians. If any of those guys are musicians, even if they make digital music, like I know digital music with a lot of AI and stuff, not nonsense nowadays. But like if someone is recording in their own studio at home, drumming on stuff, doing a Donheim kind of thing, where they're basically conducting and performing something that you can listen to. I would much rather listen to that pagan who's making something that's digital music that's meant for us and supporting them than just listening to the slop that I may see that is popular.
Yeah, like we had one a musician at the second Exiles conference, Folk and Fiddle, and like a lot of what she was doing was just like some just classical Canadian music, like military music and stuff, and just the kind of thing that kind of falls by the wayside. And like the other thing too is something we talk a lot about is the necessity of building parallel communities and economies in like away from a hostile system, so that like we don't have to rely on it. And like a lot of people that like just I know from real world pagans, we've got carpenters, farmers, electricians, herbalists. Now you probably see Exiles of the Golden Age posting a lot about just traditional folk medicine and stuff. And like having these kinds of things is also necessary to just fortressing and really being able to take care of each other if the system where you are is particularly hostile towards us.
And we'll get into it in a bit, how it's both movements nowadays are both beneficial towards things we want, but also at the same time potentially hostile towards us. And we'll get into that in a second. But yes, so in speaking of that, like for instance, before Ehrman folk, which I won't get into right now, had some political issues. that
I heard about that.
arose. Yeah, unfortunately, but at some point they, for a long time, they were also having their own coins, which were sort of minted for by membership, and those coins, of course, had the value of the coin being in the membership, but the idea was that those coins would also be something that were kind of like a monetary folk coin that would be usable and tradable and barterable between the actual members. And that's kind of, yeah, it's something that has gone by the wayside, but it's actually important to understand, because like one of the things that I always sort of advocate for is not having a full breakaway society where you don't understand and or interact with the larger at all, because if you go too away from everyone where you're not connected, then you don't know when everyone else has decided to become completely a culture against you and amasses to attack you. But also have this thing where it's a dichotomy of having one foot in the world to understand what's going on, so you can either protect yourself or take advantage of that world, or and especially if that world becomes actually for you, take advantage of it becoming for you, nationalism, something like that. But also having one foot pulled aside, pulled away, ready in case that crumbles and it isn't advantageous for you, to have that network with your those who, you know, mean you well and mean your folk well and your group well, so that way you guys can actually still function and continue to battle or to defend yourselves if the greater society, you know, turns against you or falls apart. If the society just falls apart and there's nothing left there except for your network you have in your tribe.
Yeah, like the other thing too is like the system will never, well, as it is, never like really truly leave you alone and be out of your life. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, we're going to get closer and
Yeah.
closer to Minority Report, Matrix, Psychopaths. I mean, whatever, you know, Ghost in the Shell, whatever kind of thing you want to say, where they've predicted a dystopian future where it's gotten out of hand. That's going to be, you know, something that's going to happen. It's not.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of world governments show no sign of slowing down in that respect, and we need to be ready.
And that's the thing is part of being ready is understanding what those are and taking advantage of them. And I've kind of, this is on my, it's not really the political topic, even though everything is political, but it's I discussed it in my pagan futurism concept, is that like, I don't think you should be using AI to replace artists, but I think that if you're not also taking advantage of understanding what it can be used for and what is out there, to a degree, you're going to let everyone else steamroll you.
Yeah.
I think our ancestors knew how to modernize. People who, and that's another thing I have a problem with, is some people who are so reconstructionist and revivalist, or whatever you want to call it, that they want to be like, we shouldn't even use letters anymore because it was wrong to have a literate society. Maybe in some degree, there are certain people who probably shouldn't have literacy, depending on how you want to look at things. But to try to hurt your own folk to the point where you're like, I'm going to go back into some kind of concept where we never had this technology and we're going to just be complete Luddites, to the point where we're defenseless unlearners who are less educated than everyone else and less defensible than everyone else, is actually, I think, a subversive concept.
Well, yeah, and like I've actually talked about this with some other people, and like this wasn't something we were really planning on getting into, but like I'll keep it short. Is like as far as AI goes, in my current industry, just the gaming industry, like basically right now, all of the jobs that could be done by a junior team, like, you know, junior analyst, designer, engineer and stuff, can be done by one guy commanding an army of bots. And it's like, you can sit there and fold your arms and be like, I am not going to use this technology. It's like, okay, then I guess you're starting over somewhere else with, you know, minimum wage. But like, well, right now for me as a senior level analyst, I'm pretty safe. But like, for anyone lower level, it's like you can either basically get canned with a clear conscience, or you can basically learn how to utilize these tools. And like, it is honestly kind of like, you can see how on one hand, like, yeah, it is kind of creepy. Like, remember what one time, like one of my colleagues doing something that could have taken like a day or two before, he was basically like, robot, please write me a test plan for this product. Okay, that looks good. Please write me a script. Looks good. Execute. And it was done in like 15 minutes. So like these things aren't going anywhere, and we can either, acknowledge that, or we can get steamrolled.
And it's actually kind of interesting because the the Furgan podcast I was on, he's starkly anti AI. And for some things I am too. AI music, I am absolutely effing against. AI artwork, I am half against. There's some tools that we've been using forever for AI that people don't realize. If it's something that auto contrasts to something, it's no real different. The AI is just automating it. And honestly, when people are like, "Hey, I did a sketch myself or a concept myself," and they fed it to the AI, and it took your original sketch or concept and it just kind of added to it, and then now you go into editing. To me, that's still your artwork. You're still interacting with your artwork with a program. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like some people have like a visceral reaction, like, "Oh no, I hate AI," but it's like basically this isn't the first time that there's been like a new industry changing tool that like we've had to adapt and basically, love it or hate it, realize like this is something that's going to change a lot of things on a fundamental level.
And honestly, things that lack soul are going to continue to lack soul. It's going to be obvious things that are slapped together. For instance, not to talk about video games anymore, but I've been playing Expedition 33, and I love the game. Right? I think it's a great game. I'm not finished it yet, but I'm more than halfway through. But it came out after they won all these things in their small indie studio that, they used some basic AI for like textures and background stand-ins before they went and filled in the actual AI thing. To me, that's not even using AI. That's using a program set to give you a sort of sculpt thing. It's like saying, a program gave me clay so I can sculpt extra areas that I already knew I was going to sculpt. So that's to me, and honestly, I would rather see they made a better product than all the AAA games out there that I honestly will buy and not be able to stand. And the soul was in it. It's not like something that you can tell is AI slop where the soul is not in it.
Well, it's like, that's also kind of like the equivalent of when people say that because iron that was mined in Sweden and Ireland was possibly used in the transatlantic slave trade, Ireland and Sweden deserve to be ruined by mass immigration. Like, it's just, no, come on.
Yeah,
and yes, that is a real argument I've heard.
Yeah, I mean that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I mean, now we have Amelie now, and she gets to point out all the good facts with AI that I don't know if you've seen that recently. Where I shared a comic. I love following this one thing that just is British facts about how Britain helped the world, and everybody needs to stop being woke. But so with the Exiles, we'll just get straight into it and rip off the Band-Aid. Certain controversy happened. Of course, some leftoids decided that you and everybody there was neo-Nazi, and they paparazzi took photos of you and tried to dox you and the rest of the crew and send threats. Do you have a little bit of what you're allowed to say on that topic?
Cat's out of the bag. Basically, we knew that it was going to attract attention. Like when Tom Rousel came, the basically venue that we were at received a whole bunch of threats. People threatened to show up and protest the event and stuff. Never happened. So we took more steps to just avoid harassment, but still some people showed up, vandalized one of the guys' cars, but nobody actually set foot inside, because they love this to have this idea of they're chuds, they're uneducated, but having a few really eloquent guys who can really articulate and defend why they believe what they do completely blows that image out of the water. But yeah, a few months later, yeah, I got an email saying, "Hey, you went to this event, which could reasonably be called a neo-Nazi event because they used a scary-looking rune, the Sowilo rune, in their logo, and they had the quote-unquote Black Sun on their Telegram page, which even though that one variation did come from Wewelsburg Castle, like it does come from an Alemannic and Etruscan design, and basically said like, yeah, we're gonna write a report about how you're all neo-Nazis, and it's like, I can see you've already made up your mind. And they went after a lot of people, and a few people did decide to kowtow and apologize, and they still attempted to destroy their lives. But as for the rest of us, like, we pulled together as a kindred, and what was really kind of surprising too was, well, they didn't find my employer, but some of the other guys are self-employed, but those who do have an employer, like, the employers were like, we're as sick of these people as you are, and you're not going anywhere, and like, even if you need some time, like, to lay low, like, we can work that out. So like, there was actually a lot more support for us, like, in and out of our communities than I would have imagined. But like, actually a few years ago, that's why I say to some people, like, if you're facing this kind of thing, talk to your employer now, be the one to set the baseline. Because there was a time, as you're aware, I was collaborating with someone who turned out to be a major loose cannon, and I went and sat down with my boss at the time and said, look, you might get a call from someone saying I'm a dangerous neo-Nazi or something, and before I could even get through the sentence, he was like, yeah, I am as sick of the radical left trying to, dictate and micromanage everybody's lives as you are, and, you're not going anywhere if it does happen. And he did get the call, and I did keep my job. So you might be surprised on that front.
So interestingly enough, as I know, because that individual, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, tried to come after me and dox me and everything else out of nowhere. And I didn't, just because I knew you. And he had this whole asinine story that he thought of who I was and what I was doing and where I lived, which was completely incorrect, which makes it even more hilarious. But honestly, I think that person's not online anymore, but I blocked them and everything else. But two things you had mentioned that I thought were interesting is, one, I think it's really interesting is that a lot of people who are in our sphere of either be it centrist or quote, quote, right wing, or just not in this political paradigm, which I don't see myself as in this political paradigm, even though I'm not going to to disavow all politics, because you have to take advantage of politics around you. But many of us came from the quote, quote, educated left. They're not all just these hillbillies and trailer park guys who don't actually know anything and who can't speak proper English. Instead, they're people who were so turned off by what the left had, but they were educated, that often the people on this quote, quote, right, especially in the pagan sphere, are actually more educated than those on the left, except for in their Marxist jargon. But outside of that, are more educated in actual history and linguistics and current technology and other things than they think we are. So when they encounter or attack or whatever else, they're often met. If you stick to your guns, never apologize to these people ever.
Never.
Never. It doesn't even matter. Even if you think there's something might be wrong with you, never apologize. Because as soon as you show any weakness, they will continue to hammer you home, and it doesn't matter, because you're not going to get. It's not Christianity, even though Christianity, in my opinion, birthed the Marxist concept. No, it's far left extremism.
I agree. It started like a lot of these ideas of like, everyone can be equal and ideology matters more than folk and ancestry. Like that, those are originally biblical concepts. Like, it's not that hard to see. And it really kind of paved the way for a lot of the issues that we're facing today, when people who are hostile and resentful of us can put on this mask of, oh, I'm your fellow Christian, and then have people who will allow them into their folds, where they can work against them from the inside, like Loki. That becomes a major problem.
but one of the things is Christianity, which they got rid of in the Marxist thing because they take it further, is Christianity has a way of quote quote redemption, right? So you can achieve salvation and be accepted, etc. in Christianity. But in this Marxist thing, they took all of those aspects of community and equality, etc., and they removed out the actual salvation. So you think there's a salvation. Oh, if I only say I'm wrong with this, if I only say, oh, I admit my evil whiteness, oh, capitalism bad, whatever it is that you're kowtowing to, the purity spiral is always going to be a next one, and you'll never be pure enough to achieve. It's not like Jesus washes your sins. It's not like Karl Marx comes down and baptizes you and you're great. There will always be a spiral of proletariat revolution that makes the next bad guy. And if you're not on that revolution, you're the next bad guy, no matter what.
It's an endless. And I actually, like, the quote escapes me right now, but like it even does say, like, in the Bible, like, you will never be redeemed in this life, but like commit yourself to a life of following Jesus and you'll be rewarded in the next life. But like, whereas today it's basically like there's still kind of that idea within the radical left of like, you'll probably never see this magical egalitarian utopia, but basically dedicate your entire life to this cause and you're a good person, and also we won't try to dox you and ruin your life. Like, so they eat each other almost as quickly, chewing through their own members. Eat each other. Yeah, they always eat each other. I love to watch it, honestly.
So the other topic that you had mentioned, which I thought was great because it gets into another topic me and you had discussed as well, because you said the symbols that they were using were deemed, etc., as my neo-Nazi, my far-right symbols, which is hilarious because in general, if you were to take any symbol used, I think, as you've mentioned, like any symbol used by, the Third Reich or the NSDAP or whatever you want to call them, and you wanted to take that and say, oh, any of that's evil, sooner or later you're getting the point where using all runes is evil. Well, now your heritage of no matter where, heritage of what? The Frisians, the Kelto, Anglo-Saxons and Scots and other people who had that, all Scandinavian peoples. How far does runes go? Where you have certain runic kind of things that were found in the Ukraine and the Rus areas and stuff. All of that is now disavowed and evil because of this stupid concept and slope, right?
Well, it's kind of funny. Like, actually, after this event, I was having lunch with a colleague who's Jewish, oddly enough. And, of course, he commented on the ring I was wearing. I've posted it. It's a ring that's got kind of Greco-Roman style swastikas around it. And his first comment was, it's such a misunderstood symbol. And we just kind of talked a while. And I actually showed him some, like, historical Jewish swastikas. Like, I think I've shared some of the images with you of, like, that synagogue in the Golan Heights. And, it was quite beautiful. And either way, in that conversation, I mentioned if we were to give up every single symbol that the Third Reich used, we would lose half of the runes, the Triskelion, the Sun Cross, not just the swastika. And he said, then I guess it's even more important for you to wear that now. And, like, I remember a few years ago actually seeing, like, the article about how the Vulcanate is now a hate symbol because so-and-so used it. And, like, that was one of the first times when I was like, for me, putting on that ring with the swastikas was about, like, I don't care what you call me. I am not backing down on any of my sacred symbols. Like, I'm not going to go out wearing, an angled Third Reich Hakenkreuz. But as you've seen, like, I have, so there's other variations. Like, there's that one I really like, which is like from the Viking Age, where like the arms are kind of knotted around each other and kind of in the shape of the Big Dipper. Like, there's versions we can use that like aren't, the quote unquote Hakenkreuz. But like the other thing too is, as you might have seen, the Norwegian ski team a few years ago had sweaters with Tyr and Algi's runes, and they still got dragged through the mud because those were also runes used by the Third Reich. And like, basically, that's the other thing. If we were to all say like, okay, we won't use any swastikas anymore or the Sowilo rune anymore. Next, it'll be the Algies rune, and then it'll be the Tyr rune, and they'll just keep coming and coming until we don't have any symbols of cultural and ethnic identification left. Because like that is ultimately what they would like.
Of course, and like I've said before, that is what you see in Maoism specifically, which is like the four olds, which is based off of Marxism. The four olds are old ideas, old culture, old custom, and old habits.
Yeah.
They want to demonize those, no matter how slippery the slope is, to purify it into your revolution only, and everything is put into the fire of your revolution. And so if you give up one symbol, they're going to come after the next symbol. Now, That being said, I will say that like you said, you don't need to have the tilted version of the swastika that is directly used by the NS, but also in that way, I will say those who even with the far left people, I think especially online, those who LARP, I feel like they're doing it subversively. Those who LARP as NS to be edgy, where their whole politics is their religion. They don't really believe in Odin or the gods, the Aesir and Vanir, or even any other Celtic deity or whatever else. Sometimes they'll fake being Christian, but they're not even really Christian. But they're just NS to be edgy and anti-woke. Those people are just as harmful, in my opinion, as the far left, furries and degenerates. In my opinion.
Well, it's funny, like how you mentioned that, because, like, I'm sure we all know, we're all familiar with the keyboard crusader who talks about LOL 4K Saxons, and like can't name and acts surprised when you pull out certain Bible verses that contradict what they're saying, but like. Is like where they think like this from overeager new Christian converts to some of these NS LARPers you're talking about, like they think it's the polar opposite of what they don't like, and they just go all in without even really knowing what it is from like history, philosophy. They just think it's the polar opposite of woke.
And that's one thing I can't stand is like, especially both the right, the neocon right, and the left, especially in America, but also in Britain and Canada, everywhere else we have, where it's like this idea where anything I don't like is fascism and Nazi. I'm not saying you have to like fascism. There's some things in fascism I really don't like. Like that's cat's out of the bag. I'm not like a card carrying Roman saluting every 5 seconds Nazi, but also I'm not a super going to shy away from reading Oswald Mosley and understanding the certain aspects of things and the struggles that people had during those times and why they would have turned to such things, and if there are augmented versions of any form of politics that could be something closer to what we should have, tribally or nationally for our respective peoples and regions. But the thing is when you like have that stuff, they'll literally not even, you don't have to agree with it, but be educated enough not to just throw the word. And the same thing goes with the word commie too, especially in the 80s and earlier, where everything was, that was those pinko commies, that commie whatever. If you don't know what communism is, don't call everything communism. And same thing, you don't know what fascism is, it doesn't mean Satan and heretic, which is what they use now, where everything they don't like is Satan and heretic from Christianity. It's Nazi and fascist. Okay, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I made a self-proclaimed pagan once really pissed off when I quoted Jacob Grimm, and it's like, take a breath, what's the problem? And it turns out a certain Austrian painter really liked Jacob Grimm, and it's like, okay, but Jacob Grimm passed away like before he was even born, so like, what are you getting at here?
And that's the same thing. Like, yes, there are people who were inspired by, Guido von List and were contemporaries of him who did the same thing. But the things that he were doing in mysticism or even people before him were well before. Maybe you think they're controversial, but they're well before the Third Reich happened. So you can't say every single thing that the Third Reich or anyone like that would ever use is going to suddenly mean that it taints all of history going back, which is what they want to do. They want to taint all of your history going back so that you can say those medieval Anglo-Saxon runes, they're now somehow Hitler's, even though they were well before he was ever born and or even thought of, or even where he was from as a region.
As you've talked about too, like, I'm not going to allow World War II to dictate every facet of my worldview. I'm just not.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think with that, we would go ahead and straight up say, like, are either of us, neo-Nazi? No, I'm not.
Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. They'll call me one either way. They're
going to call you one either way. Yeah.
Yeah, they've made up their minds. That much is obvious. And, there's absolutely, as you said, there's no point in, kowtowing or attempting to convince these people otherwise. They've made up their minds. And, like, if you, for example, with Exiles, like, if you even went to that event, and, like, I've actually, a few people I've spoken to, like, who I've just kept in touch with, are very much in the situation of, I just went there because I wanted to meet some more pagans in my area, and now I'm worried that I might lose my livelihood because of these people.
Which was the goal. That was the goal of those people, to demonize them, so that even if they associate with you. Yeah. And,
like, the other thing too is that like, I've kind of told some of these folks is, you're one, first of all, I do encourage anyone who does face doxing or anything, even people who might have been at that event, to file a criminal complaint, because in a lot of the civilized world, doxing is very much criminal harassment. And even if it doesn't lead to a conviction, which, probably won't in a lot of places because our justice systems are a joke, if, enough of us did that and made them, go to court, prepare a defense, that would be a very real deterrent to doing it again, make them stop and think. And, like, the other thing I've told them is, like, when we do have, like, a kindred with people, whether that's jobs or just people who have dealt with this before, like, when you have a kindred, your brothers have got you. You've got people you can go to who can help you through this chapter and figure out what the next steps are, which I know has been very helpful for a lot of people who have gone to the event and basically just faced, harassment like they never have before.
And with that, to sort of pivot from the constant conversation that we had about the Third Reich, even though we have to, like you said, with kowtowing, at no point, regardless whether I refuse to be defined by the paradigm of the current two-party system that seems to be focused on World War II ideas. But even if so, there are things I'm going to find useful from anything, right? But with that, I'm not going to kowtow if someone calls me it, and I'm going to be like, oh no, I'm not. Please, I'll keep on purity spiral and burning everything so you don't think I am something. That's ridiculous. And honestly, for the whole thing is that I don't see a reason to bring it up to in my spirituality on every daily basis. And if you're bringing to, like I said with some people, if you're bringing to your kindred or your spirituality, you need to talk about society, you need to talk about culture, you need to talk about changes in culture. But if every time you meet, regardless whether you're right wing, central, or semi left, if every time you meet, every conversation is not about the gods, what you can do with the culture and the kindred, and how to connect with your ancestors, but it's some kind of rally for right wing or left wing KKK style rally or whatever commie or Nazi rally. If that is your idea of meeting in a folk moot or thing or just bloat, then you're wrong on either side of the house, because you should be coming to what actually matters for your ancestors and for the lore and for what you're there for.
Yeah, and what you need to realize is, one, to these people, a Nazi is anyone right of Mao. And, like, yes, there is actually that saying, actually, from someone I forget his name, but someone who was formerly Antifa, he said, like, we don't call you a Nazi because you are one. We label you a Nazi so that we can then justify attacking you, and like that's exactly what this is.
Yep.
It's dehumanization, delegitimization, the most suitable term is actually stochastic terrorism, because they know full well they are inciting violence. People might not just lose their livelihood; people might get hurt because of this, and like, don't give them the benefit of a doubt. They want that.
Yep, exactly, and it's like I said, like we both have said, it is harkens back to the Christian concept, even with their own people for Christianity. Anybody who was too out of the ordinary, mystical, whatever else, you name them a heretic, a witch, a pagan, whatever.
Yeah.
And then now that you've named them that, even though if your proof is very misinterpreted or not even flaky proof at best, you've labeled them that, so now everyone thinks of that and they're scared of that because the overarching government is going to be harsh on that. So same thing, if these people call you a Nazi, you're going to be afraid to be called that, and then they think, oh, now we've got them because everyone else is going to be called it, so they're going to shun you, ostracize you, and then they can start attacking you. And so honestly, everyone just needs to stop giving them what they want and not giving a crap what ist, phobe, or Z they decide they want to call you.
Yeah.
So next topic, we will go on to continuing down the U.S. and Canadian kind of route. So you say that there's legislation that could basically say them just calling you such a thing would be a preemptive arrest. Sounds kind of like Britain with the memes and or in a similar concept.
Yes, it's very concerning, and like there's particular legislation that has not withstood charter challenges before, but like it's basically like the Canadian government saw what was happening in Britain. I'm sure we've all seen the videos. The guy getting called to his house, "Oh, Mike, you caused someone anxiety," and basically saw that and said, "Hold my whiskey." But like, if this legislation were to pass, it would have been not just as a very vague definition of hate would become criminalized, where you could get put away if basically anything you did or said was determined by a left-wing court to have been motivated by hate. But someone could anonymously say, "I'm worried so-and-so might say or do something hateful," and you could be preemptively arrested, and that person would also get a cash reward. Like, I know some people have strong feelings about this, but like I've considered leaving Canada if it were to pass, because there comes a point where stand and fight becomes the equivalent of over the top, as in World War I. You're just going to be taken out of the fight. Like, this would be, it would basically take these people who have spent the past few months trying to destroy not just the lives of the people who, basically put together the Exiles event, but like even just these people who went there thinking, "Oh, I'm going to meet other pagans." It would just put a smoking gun in each of their hands. So yeah, it's very, it keeps me up at night, to be honest.
So that is really concerning, and I'm honestly hoping that some codified civil liberties, unfortunately, if they turn over certain things, but some codified civil liberties, at least I know within the United States, there are certain things, articles and forms of the Constitution that are rights that are considered are debatable, and you can at least use those rights to stand up for your freedom of etc. I know Canada has a lot less than that, more than Britain does, more than the UK or England does, but less than the United States do. So it is concerning. But
if any of our viewers are Canadian, like you need to be paying attention to this. Like if this passes, freedom of speech will be a thing of the past, and like we they want you focused on the big scary Trump monster, but like don't let them weasel this through. Like, your future and your children's future is going to change drastically if this happens.
Is this also in line with the one where they? I mean, not to be pro Abrahamic then, but there are some aspects of of Christianity that I do have kinship with. We all do, just by our ancestors. But is this the same legislation that would also make the Bible hate speech? Because
Yes.
okay, that's what I thought. I saw a whole uh, video breakdown from another Canadian fellow who was talking about it, and yeah, that's
Well,
pretty
a-
concerning.
and it's like they actually tried to do that in Finland a few years ago. You might remember, and like it's like even as a pagan, like I don't think any religion has been like challenged by the radical left as much as Christianity in the West, at least. And like even though I'm not a Christian and I don't, well, I know the Bible. I've read it cover to cover, and I wouldn't you know, align with those quotes myself. Like, if the titan of religious freedom falls, that is not something to celebrate for any of us, because it'll be the Edda next. It'll be the Edda before it's the Quran, believe me.
Oh, absolutely. It'll
Yeah.
be anything before it's the Quran. And honestly, that's the same concept. Is that at most of those quotes that they could say are hate speech or whatever else from the Bible, I could find you a direct parallel in uh, not just in the Edic culture, Edic Germanic lore, but I could find you things in Celtic cycles. I could find you any of the writings of any of the Roman authors or Plato. I could probably find you Hindu and Buddhist texts that directly say things that would be considered offensive by that nature, and all that does is put you into. They always want to talk about book burning, but it puts you into the actual communist style,
Struggle sessions.
struggle sessions, and that is the goal. So with that being unfortunate, but also talking about books. So first of all, we have the whole Charlie Kirk thing. I hate talking
Yeah.
about Charlie Kirk. I'm so sick of Charlie Kirk. I watched some kind of meme, conservative meme channel, and in that conservative meme channel, I watch it for fun with my family while we're eating. Sometimes, just to have. It's like America's Funniest Home Video doesn't exist anymore, so you have this meme channel, right? But this guy started where he just pumps like little segments about Charlie Kirk, like he's some kind of savior, martyr, saint all the time. I'm so tired of hearing about Charlie Kirk. Like,
Yeah, I barely
him
knew who he
being.
was.
Yeah, I forgot. I literally would swipe off his videos because they were the same old basic conservative talking points, which were good. Most of them were good, except for his anti-pagan crap. But most of them were good in general. They were just in general, percentages of this and how actual education should work and how economics should work, etc. They weren't bad, but they were just so preachy and extreme, especially when they got on
Well,
Christian
it's
stuff.
like, yeah, and like that's another thing for like what we were talking about earlier about like never apologize. Like, what if it wasn't already obvious? What should be obvious is he was like one of the most milquetoast conservatives there was. He was
Oh
like,
yeah,
yeah, he was also trying to like bridge the gap with the radical left, and not only did he get shot, but like all these videos people made of laughing and cheering and mocking him as he's bleeding out on stage and stuff should just show beyond a shadow of a doubt there is absolutely no compromise or coexisting with these people. Like, never. That ship has long since sailed. Like, never bow or apologize, but instead focus on building something with your own people that's defensible and sustainable.
yeah. He was ridiculed and assassinated for concepts that were way less
Yeah.
controversial than what's said on the news on the nightly basis on Fox, or way less controversial than Steven Crowder would say, or any of these other popular kind of people. He was attacked for something that was
Well,
very, like I said, you said milk toast and very basic conservative ideas.
yeah, and like when you think about it too, like we were talking about like the terminating online, like what I know about the killer too is basically it looked, well, one, like he was trying to impress his boyfriend, and like this guy would have lived a life that would have been more free than he could have imagined, like living a lifestyle that would get you lynched by vigilantes in a lot of the world, but be in this left wing or these various left wing echo chambers telling him he's being genocided, his rights are going to be taken away, and he's going to be put in a camp, which none of this is happening. But like you want to talk about, online rhetoric radicalizing people? Like, that's a prime example right there. Same as someone else who took a shot at Trump. Like, yeah, it's ridiculous, honestly.
And honestly, that kind of brings me to the second thing is online radicalization and people saying certain things. Apparently, you said so that a major pastor, which I don't know the pastor's name, said that Charlie Kirk Killer was a pagan, which makes me want to get into the pagan concept, the Christian idea, which this is going to continue with. We'll probably continue this topic till the end. The Christian idea that everything that we don't like, that's not Abrahamic, that's not worship Yahweh, is instantly pagan, no matter what flavor of, even other Christians are pagan to these people. And it's always whatever is evil or degenerate or whatever else they don't like is what is pagan. And when something bad happens, instead of turning towards what bad happens, communism on the rise, Muslims invading, etc., or, just the loss of actual faith, or, hey, your churches are full of degenerate nonsense and poor scripture. But no, that's not a side. And anytime there's a problem, we are the exact puppet that you think we are, and we do our master's bidding, and we turn and punch our fellow man who's of the same ethnic roots or nationality. We punch him and call him evil pagan, no matter what. And so, yeah, that's kind of the
I believe it was Pastor Lucas Miles who said Charlie Kirk's killer was a pagan, which he wasn't. Show me which kindred he was associated with. There's not a single one. And like, the thing is I wouldn't put it past them that like this is inciting violence against pagans, because like I've read the Bible enough to know what they think should be done to non-believers. And again, with thinking Christianity is the polar opposite of wokeism, I think there's a lot of very powerful people that would like to have basically this banner that they unite everyone under, being Christianity, and get rid of the outliers. And like, I'm sure we've all seen the pictures and videos of pagan temples and shrines being attacked and destroyed in Eastern Europe. Well, I'm seeing more and more of that from the United States, especially. Talking like shrines in the forest being vandalized, crosses carved into them, and also just flat out attacks against pagans. Like, there was recently a metaphysical store owner, and like, yeah, I know that was like a Wicca hippie type pagan, was severely beaten by a Christian who came into his store and like screamed something like "death to all witches" as he was beating him up. And that's another thing that's like, with just all the bickering online in our sphere and stuff, like when this guy went into that store, do you think he stopped and said, wait, is this a folkish pagan? Is this a Platonist or a syncretist? No, all he saw was pagan.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, definitely with the divisive, constant nonsense, and we've talked about those people. And I actually think we should have a whole episode on just them. Or
yeah,
what I call
I suppose. Yeah. Well, one other thing too is like at the second time around at Exiles, if you can believe it, I actually I'm not going to name names, was sent screenshots of conversations in some folkish channels, basically with threats against me, because they don't like some of what I think would be pretty milquetoast ideas, like not some gods can be shared, that like someone should come and steal my artifacts and do various things to me. And so I was sitting there at Exiles having to worry about someone in our own sphere while Antifa was literally outside the front door, and like, that's just ridiculous in my mind. But I will say, the friends I made at Exiles, there was not a moment that there were not eyes on my table. I told them, like, look, I have a few loose cannons in what should be our sphere have said this, and they said, don't worry, we'll make sure nothing happens to your artifacts. So, thanks, guys.
Yeah, and thanks to them as well, because honestly, that's what you get with this purity spiral, which is very leftist in some ways. This purity spiral of constant you can't do this, it's too syncretic, you can't
Yeah,
do this, it's
and
too modern, or the whole idea of this, what we call extreme purity folkish or folk slop idea of constantly seeing this Abrahamic boogeyman everywhere, to the point where if you associate with anyone's like that, you even cross tweet something that they're going to go after you. It's a very, very leftist kind of idea.
And like, well, they've seen how effective it is for our enemies and have adopted it themselves. And like, yeah, the other thing is like, there were some other pagan content creators there, aside from me and Paul and Marcus, but there were not one of these folk slop people who've been coming after us for years. Like, I didn't see one of them there. They were probably sitting at home talking about, oh, so-and-so is actually doing X wrong, while we're actually, building something real and building real connections. So...
And that's the thing with those people. I never see any shares or posts or anything from them showing, here's my actual bloat I did with a group of guys. Here, even my own personal, I'm not saying you should be performative, but even my own personal altar, or here's a real, I exist in real life, not trying to dox themselves, but I exist in real life, and I did this actual thing for the gods, and I'm actually praising. It's all, I read a bunch of nonsense, or I read a bunch of old history texts, and I'm going to take, oh, well, this guy said something, and I'm going to post it with the picture, and then I'm going to use the word Aryan, but complain that people are I hate Indo-Europeans, but I'm going to call everything Aryan, even though the term Aryan would imply Indo-European. And then afterwards, they're going to say, oh, you have to be folkish, but I'm going to post things across Eurasia of, oh, here's what this Greek person said. Now here's what the Slavic person says. Now here's what this Roman. Now you've just jumped all over.
Yeah, I think like, Indo-European connections wouldn't be a hot topic if it weren't for the current heated debates about immigration, specifically from India. But like, yeah, the other thing I was going to touch on is like, I do think, without being performative, like, I do think sharing like pictures and videos of real practice is a good thing, because like, actually, when I was getting started as a pagan, like, that was one of my first questions, is like, is this something that actually exists in the real world as a viable path? Or is it just like a few nerds in a chat room? And like, seeing that these things are real, I think can really help kind of be the last nudge someone might need. Like, I posted a while ago, like, someone I knew had just a really kind of just condescending attitude towards paganism. Like, I was open about it. I didn't like proselytize. It was just like, you can be respectful or it's going to affect our relationship. But I basically let him oversee one bloat I did, and his whole attitude changed. He hasn't converted, but still, it's like, it changed his perspective. Like, you could see him. Like, I have seen a few terminally online people saying like, oh, you're taking something sacred and reducing it to internet points. But like, I don't see it that way at all. I see, social media as a tool that we can use, and maybe don't film, like, if you're doing like a really personal speech at a bloat, which I know some people in our spheres do, but like, just even just like as you're setting up, or like in the process, like, snap a few pics, and like, don't let it take away from being present in the moment and really experiencing the ritual. But like that, just that split second, pull your camera out, take a picture. Like, I think that can actually that can really go a long way for all of us.
And that's the one thing, is one, two things there is one, we have that the idea is, I'm not saying that people should become these mega churches which are all performative, right? But the idea is that Christianity Christianity or Islam, or we'll even say Buddhism and Hinduism, didn't grow by not performing and showing performance of these things. And then within Buddhism, we have this idea of, with skillful means. And sometimes skillful means that I'm not going to show you the most, initiatory sutra, but there's basic mantras, sutras, and rituals that I'm going to express. There's images and idols and stuff that I'm going to show you, because they preach and teach you. And paganism should have that idea as well.
Yeah.
Is that you're not hiding everything. And that's one thing I don't like about, even though I get along with a lot of the people with the Asatru Folk Assembly, AFA, but I don't like the fact is that the couple of times they have posted pictures of them doing a sprinkling of water, doing a naming of a baby, doing a fire ceremony, doing a blot, doing a coronation kind of thing of a Hoff. They got glorious, interactions of people like, oh, this is real. You guys are doing something. But their constant posting of, here's a bunch of out of shape, overweight people in America sitting around going to what they call a moot, but they're just eating at a restaurant talking. And those people are great, right? And I'm glad that they're pagan. I'm glad that they're doing something for it. But that's not that people seeing all that. It shows that you have membership, but it doesn't show them that there's anything worth striving for. It doesn't show them anything that's real, that's actual religious and spiritual. And they're like, well, there's no different. This church down the street is praying. I mean, their songs are probably cheesy, but the church down the street is praying and they're doing etc. It sounds more like it's performative, but it's more something that like is speaking to you, where people gathering around a table is not speaking to you.
Yeah, I'm not a member of the AFA, and they don't really have any presence where I am. But like the bone that I will definitely throw them, like what I think about how they adopt kind of Catholic imagery because it's familiar, like with their priestly outfits. But like I have seen like some of the paintings inside some of the temples, which I think are quite beautiful. And like I do think aesthetics plays a bigger role than people think. And like even as you were saying with Buddhism, like I definitely think like some of that beautiful, especially Tibetan style Buddhist art, like a lot of people like in the West obviously get this idea that like Buddhism means be compassionate, dude. And they don't go like beyond that. But then like you see people who see like, a picture of like, a Dharmapala or something and go like, hang on, like what is that? Like, tell me more. Like aesthetics is a very powerful tool wielded correctly.
And I do appreciate some of the modernization that like AFA does, where it's like their guys dress their Sunday best. I think tunics and stuff. I think there's a time. I think they should sometimes have ceremonies where people wear traditional garbs of their ancestors. But I also think that having the garb of your ancestor, being your ancestor from 100 to 200 years ago, and you're wearing 1800s, English caps and Irish caps and stalls and nice button-up shirt. Honestly, sometimes that's also a good presentation. You know what I mean?
And like I've even like seen that like at the Exiles conferences, someone brings like some like a wool tweed vest or something, and like I do think like I've just seen in a lot of just the AFA's messaging that like you don't like always need like I'm talking specifically about like their priestly attire, but like I do think that like basically having not just like thousands, but like hundreds of year old ancestral attire can be a good thing as well. And like the other thing too with like the like wool caps and tweed and herringbone and stuff that I see them wearing is like that particular textile weave goes back at least to the Bronze Age, so it's more ancestral than some people realize.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the tartan is it very much is, or kilts. But I will say, like if I am every day, not that you shouldn't in some aspects be to an extreme on something, but if I'm every time you see me doing something, or every time my kindred meets and we're half dressed, covered in woad and shouting like berserkers and getting psycho drunk every time, there's a time and place for that. It is very important. You should have rituals where you do cover yourself in that and have maybe some fights or some wrestling or some martial arts or bloat that's heavy on the alcohol or stuff. That stuff is important, but that shouldn't be every single meeting. And so I agree with having a sort of a time and place for that, and then an everyday approachable place beside that.
Well, like as you know, like I recently got together with some of the people from Exiles, and we did do some more kind of like I'd almost say like trance type states in the ritual with like face paint and drumming and without using substances, kind of entering into that different kind of ecstatic mindset. But like we weren't holding up a camera and filming that whole thing. Like that was also because like each of us, when we did Symbol, like we did also talk about like some more personal things about our ancestors, our immediate ancestors, and like what we want to do going forward. And like we didn't necessarily want to, broadcast that to the world. But that picture I did take of my sweetbread next to the fire, that was on an altar that they'd built after that ritual.
Exactly. And so I would say, that goes back to just the performative thing. You don't have to film a whole bloat. Actually, I think you shouldn't film the whole bloat. But having one photo of the bloat, or the priest at least starting the bloat, but everyone's time you do a symbol and everyone's turn around with the horn, that you don't need to film all that. That's precious and that's sacred to them. But not having a photo at all of the event, just I think it harms. I'm all for using the internet for promoting, not just your points and your money, but like promoting. Money is a thing, so sometimes you make money. The money helps. The reason why I have a Patreon is that my Patreon is paying for me to be able to do this conversation right now with the programs I have. But the idea is that you have to be a balance between being performative and being genuine. So I would pivot again back to the topic at hand, which is, so you talked about Charlie Kirk's, like a major pastor talked about Charlie Kirk's killer was pagan. That same major pastor is the one who I'm looking at his book right now on Amazon recently, that Lucas Miles, with the Pagan Threat, Confronting Americans' Godless Uprising with a Forward by Charlie Kirk. Well, first of all, yet again, he says the word pagan and godless, which is the dumbest fucking concept ever. Pardon my French there, but dumbest concept ever, because pagans, one, either have multiple gods or your word God actually comes from paganism, so shut the F up. I'm going to get pretty mad with this one. And I've seen other people who, like, recently I saw a guy on Twitter, and if he hears this, I don't remember who he was. I apologize. It was actually a very good take. He opened up the book and took some photos of it at his local Barnes and Noble or something. And he was just pointing out how it didn't understand Hermeticism at all, but it wanted to take Hermeticism, call it evil paganism, which is funny because most of Christianity is based off of concepts from Hermeticism and Platonism. Like they literally just stole those concepts that already existed in the Greek magical papyri and the old Greco-Roman world. So that's ridiculous. But also, like I was looking at one of the reviews on here, which said legitimately, it's a very long review, legitimately just went on to how he doesn't understand paganism. And the whole idea of what his thing is to basically try to push a modern crusade-like witch hunt, witch trials, etc. idea, but blaming pagans for everything. Just like, it seems like Christians always do. So I just think it's funny. Yeah.
Even like their equivalent of, like I was saying, I don't call you a Nazi because you are one. I call you a Nazi so I can attack you. That, but paganism and the increasingly militant Christian right, it's the same thing.
Yeah. And people think that, yes, I call out e-Crusaders online, and I will tell you that the majority, not all, the majority of Christians I've met in real life are not e-Crusader level of blasphemous psychos, whatever else, right?
Well, it's funny,
Yeah, go ahead.
So, someone actually, you might have seen, I made a post on Christmas Day, actually, about evidence for ancestral religion in other species, namely, like, how wolves will come back to where packmate has died, and, like, their heads and tails go down, and, like, for years after its death, like, they will go out of their way to come back to this place. And elephants do similar things, and will, like, even tend to the bones they're dead. And someone comments on Christmas Day, crust is king. And I said, like, dude, it's Christmas. Why are you arguing with a pagan online? Go to church with your family. Like, what are you doing? Come on. But at the same time, unfortunately, in my own sphere of people I know in real life, I've seen people, convert to, like, orthodoxy because it's accessible, but then also share articles saying things like the World Economic Forum is pagan and stuff, and I've tried to reel them in about, like, no, they are not. and this is the kind of thing that's going to get people hurt.
I'm about to make a video of it as well. I think I'm going to make a video out of it because I made a post, but I haven't shared it on my Patreon, shared it on my X, but it was a video about that this guy who was basically stalking my pages, and he made like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 posts, which, he's a nobody with no following, so I'm not going to, it doesn't really matter. But is what he was saying, even got Tom Roswell fucking replying, and he was like, oh, Epstein was a pagan. You guys are in line with Epstein. And it was just the dumbest nonsense, because anyone who has anything, first of all, the cult is mostly an Abrahamic ideas that borrow heavily from pagan stuff. And even Tom had said, this is actually an interesting thing that I'll probably read it with it, but like, I'm not going to go into the whole depth, but like, Epstein had this quote quote temple which looked like a synagogue. It was made to look like the Temple of the Rock. So I don't know why you would say that's somehow pagan, but if Jewish equals pagan to them, I would, whatever. It's Abrahamic. Ancient Jewish may be more pagan. Enough,
well, like ancient Judaism was not too different from other polytheistic religions, but
absolutely, yeah. But
today it's a lot different.
Yeah. So, but the funny thing is I was looking through it, and this guy's making these comments, and I was just like, yeah, it's so cool. He has this temple, and it has like astrology stuff on the top, and that's basically it. And so this guy literally thinks that anything. So Tom said that, no, he isn't pagan. Occultism is predominantly Abrahamic. Also, Christianity and Judaism were influenced by Roman paganism for 2,000 years. So if you can call them a cult if you want, if that means anything influenced by paganism. So,
and like a cult is a pretty broad stroke, because like there was Roman occultism and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's becoming a catch-all for kind of like pagan for things Christians don't like.
It's just, and I'm going to save that for a whole nother episode, but going on the same kind of topic, and things we were talking about is recently going also with that book. You got more people.
I read some of it. It was basically an elementary school level understanding of paganism.
It's the typical Christian conversion level of paganism. And so here's this thing where it's retweeted by the Catholic Vote. And I made this post, not to toot my own horn, but I made this post like so many hours prior to everyone else who started, all the other pagan guys who literally took my post and started to retweet it on their own. They like really made my post. But anyways, so in the post I was saying that, the Catholic Vote quotes Vice President Vance, and I'm not against Trump or Vance in general. In some ways, there's some things I actually align with where I agree with them. And there's some things I vastly don't agree with them, but that's just life, right? But Vance goes. Well, I think Vance is obviously just trying to rally for people to get votes for him to become president in this next cycle. But Vance goes and says, in the ancient pagan world, discarding children was routine. The March for Life is about whether we remain as a civilization under God. I keep using that Germanic word God there, or we return to the paganism that dominated the past. So I basically said this was stupid. It was also anti-European heritage. Christians call anything they don't like or that isn't Abrahamic as pagan. They rarely know what paganism is outside of their Hebraic narrative of everyone who doesn't bow to Yahweh, which made sense for the Hebraic narrative. I'm not going to be angry at ancient Israelites, in Exodus saying only worship your tribal God. Cool, that was their approach. But taking that out of context to say everyone else should do that is what Christianity and Islam does, and it's ridiculous. But some would even say that this would be perceived as a call to violence, which I put that in after discussing with you and our topic at hand. Pretty sure that the U.S. has freedom of religion, right? How about government officials stop ignorantly and openly calling everything they think is evil pagan? Pretty sure Mr. Vance's wife and her family are pagan, by the way, because they're Hindu. But him or his speechwriters wouldn't say Hinduism, Buddhism, etc., or even Islam, when they are labeling what they think is evil while talking in public. But it's a slippery slope, and that is what it ends up meaning in the end. I don't disagree with everything, of course, about Mr. Vance or Trump, but I will say it's a reminder to Mr. Vance in his photo of him with a bindi or a fucking
And the
red
tilak.
mark on his forehead. Yep. And wearing a tunic and having a laurel flowers and his feet bathed in stuff, reminded him that his wedding and everything else and the ceremonies he took care of are pagan. So at that point, him even wearing like that is the paganism that he needs to remain a civilization under God and not the dominated pagan of the past. Well, that's your dominated pagan of the past.
Well, and like I did touch on this a while ago, but like one conversation I actually had in real life is had a Christian actually break down in tears as he claimed that our ancestors didn't value life because they quote unquote discarded infants, but like in reality, in an Indo-European sense, like they did euthanize newborns that had birth defects that would have made their lives hell on earth. And what I reminded him, too, was when the Romans faced off with the child sacrificing cult of Baal Hammon in Carthage, they were pagans. Like, they were fighting Carthage for other reasons. But, like, we have archaeological evidence now. Like, a claim that a few chroniclers made was that, they immolated infants and beat drums really loud so they didn't hear the baby screaming. And as it burned, its face contorted into kind of like a smile. And like we have these masks with these ghoulish, disturbing grins. It's like, that's what this is. And the Romans came and saw this, and like they conquered a lot of peoples without suppressing their religion. But they destroyed the temple of Baal Hammon, and they didn't build a church on top of it. They built a temple of Juno on top of it. And there were no more infant immolations after the Romans took the city. So, like, Baal, a lot of people like, oh, Baal, oh, Moloch. Well, Moloch is an adjective. Baal was conquered not in the name of Jesus, but in the name of Juno.
And it's really funny because Baal just means Lord. So you can say Baal Haman, Baal Ahmad, Baal. So it's not a one deity in that sense. And then when it was Baal, one deity, that Baal was absorbed. The Al in that is very similar to Allah, right? It's the same El, right? It was absorbed into the greater concept of El and later Yahweh. So these Christians who worship this weird merger of Deus and Odin via Gaut and Dionysus and Zeus, and now you have Baal and Yahweh in there all mixed together and call him God. Well, you can't be like, I hate abortion, but then all of these people in this region, which include the people who are worshiping Yahweh, were also associated with that concept. The same people who had the binding of Isaac, which would be considered killing your own child. And then what people always forget when they love the abortion thing, they love to talk about the Romans getting that temple and rectifying those Phoenicians. But I think it's really hilarious that they're always talking about the Punic Wars and stuff, and they forget the fact that the Romans and Punic Wars were not Christian. They didn't do this in the name of Christ. They didn't, like you said, build a church. They were pagan and doing this. And even though, yes, there are forms of paganism, and I even agree with some of it, that have some sort of eugenics kind of concepts, there are certain birth defects and other ideas I think that a child shouldn't have to suffer through. And honestly, I think a child of rape, and I don't care if it's controversial, I think a child, born out of rape shouldn't have to happen either. But
it's like, how do you think Iceland has nearly eliminated certain hereditary conditions?
I mean, that's the thing. When we can wax and wane who we think should be aborted, who we think we shouldn't be aborted, that's both a slippery slope for any conversation. But the idea that you think abortion is bad, so you will go ahead and blame every paganism on abortion, and then somehow equate that to to one set of pagans in the Middle East, and then another one in the Mayan area or whatever else, or
Yeah,
Aztecs.
and like there's a huge difference between a society that will say, yes, this child is not going to have a good life. Please take care of him, gracious gods, versus someone who's going to willingly put a healthy infant on an altar to be burned alive in the name of Baal Hamon. Like, it's a vast gulf.
And that's the thing, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you're in Gothic alternate culture and you're playing D&D and you like Magic the Gathering, you're an evil pagan. It doesn't matter if you have saints and you think the angels are pretty cool and maybe they help watch over you, you're now a pagan. It's all this Protestantism that pushes this the most, even more than Catholicism, Orthodoxy now, even though they're just as bad. Protestantism pushes this the most, and it's the slippery slope to Marxism, where now we just took the word pagan out and now you're a Nazi or anything that we don't like. It's all in this political paradigm, which I openly reject, and I won't. I will keep discussing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I will not allow the modern left-right march to define my entire worldview. My politics, well, politically I'm a monarchist. My politics arise from my faith, and not the other way around. Like,
yeah,
I didn't.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't go into paganism looking to validate existing beliefs. I've been pagan for a long time, probably longer than a lot of people in our sphere. Like, my faith has shaped a lot of my views, but like I think that's the other thing. A lot of people go into it thinking it's one thing, and are like looking for something that's going to validate what's a pre-existing view, which might even be Abrahamic adjacent sometimes, oddly enough.
And that's the thing. Well, we can go on that on another topic, another day, of people coming from Abrahamic mindset or view, just escaping it, or coming from that worldview and trying to adjust paganism into their current concept of what they think original sin or left right ideas are. But that's not how you should approach it. And honestly, like you said, I'm I dig the monarchy as well, but that concept, as long as it's from the people and for the people. But I will say
I'm not talking about like the UK's rotten monarchy, but like a good example is Bhutan, because Bhutan is an awesome monarchy, and like you can tell that the king makes decisions based on not what's going to maximize profits, but like what the Bhutanese people want. And I admire him probably more than any other world leader.
But yeah, even with that, like what I'm saying is that I don't like the current paradigm, and I've refused. My spirituality and my understanding of my faith, it dictates my approach to the politics, be that at the time defined by a swinging pendulum as left or right. It doesn't matter, because what I go by what actually matters, which is my spirituality. So if my spirituality, by the Lord, by my ancestors, by the ethics I believe, if my spirituality that day is defined by the modern world as left or right or centrist, well, that's just what it is, because it doesn't matter, because those paradigms don't matter to me.
Yeah, agreed.
That actually ends our topic for today and our discussion.
Thank you for hosting.
Absolutely. We'll have you on again, and of course, I'll keep in touch. And for all the folks out there listening, I hope you found this interesting. I know it was a little bit more of a ramble. We went on various tangents, but we covered a lot of things that I think over the last year. We covered basically 2025 in some extent, going into 2026, sort of a new year, kind of what to look forward to. It's not all gloom and doom. I kind of want to point that out, is because you should be, take pride in and take actual joy in what you love about your culture, your faith, your people, and the kindred around you. Actually love things, like be it a hobby, be it anything out there that you have joy. That joy could be part of your culture, part of your space, with the lore or music or anything else, or if it's just something that's not a slippery slope of degeneracy, but something out there, be it games or anything else you're doing, martial arts, music, or even a sport. But do everything in the eyes of the gods and the eyes of your ancestors, and take joy in your life, because the one thing they can't take away from you is joy if you allow yourself to experience it. Any parting words, Malcolm?
Yeah, along those lines. I've said it before. Like hate and fury are necessary parts of human existence, but remembering to enjoy and really love and appreciate the good things. What are you doing? What are you defending? And thanks
you can't
to
hate what you can't hate what you don't if you don't have something to love, compare it to.
Thank you for hosting, and thank you to all of my viewers and subscribers as well.
Absolutely. Everybody check him out on, it'll be linked in the description wherever this is posted, on X, on Telegram, anywhere else that he has his work. And then also last kind of plug in, me and Malcolm are working together on the Will of Galt book, which will hopefully be coming out this year. There's some executive decisions on what we're going to keep in there and what we're going to take out. But I'm hoping to be able to have that produced this year. It's been kind of a long time coming.
Yeah, look forward to it.
All right, Hammer and Vajra out.